Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, EU leaders meeting in Brussels have agreed a package of measures to offer Turkey in return for the country taking back thousands of migrants that arrive in Greece every day, mainly onto the islands. Then many of them make it onto the mainland. The plan is a crucial part of the EU strategy to solve, or at least deal in some way with the migrant crisis, with fears that the numbers attempting the crossing will increase again as summer approaches. It's already been at record levels in the winter months. So let's talk to our correspondent in Brussels, Ben Wright. Ben, good to talk to you again. The European Union, as I understand it, has agreed the broad outlines of what it's going to offer based on the Merkel package. Do we have any idea yet what the Turkish reaction is?
Many floors up from where I'm standing. They're having that discussion right now. Donald Tusk, President of the Council, Jean-Claude Juncker from the Commission, Turkish Prime Minister Mark Rutte from the Netherlands. They're all having small groups of meetings with the key players to try and get an agreement hammered out before Ahmet Davutoglu and the rest of the 28 members of the European Union sit down together and try and sign this off. As you said, the European Union agreed their negotiating position over 5 hours of talks last night. Now they're trying to do a deal, but there is no guarantee they're going to get one because there are a huge number of sticking points here. We know that the European Union wants a deal. Angela Merkel really wants a deal. But Cyprus, for instance, is not going to just sign off new accession talks with Turkey unless the Turkish government accepts that the Cypriot government is the government for the whole island. There are concerns about the legality of the plan. Greece is demanding more personnel to go down and help put this plan into practice. There are all sorts of hurdles to clear, despite what clearly is quite a strong desire, both from the Turkish side and the European Union, to get an agreement.
Ben, as I understand it, the deal will certainly, in the early stages of it, involve 72,000 Syrians. There are about 72,000 Syrians in Greece go back to Turkey, and over time, 72,000 Syrians in the camps in Turkey come back into Greece properly processed and so on. Is there any idea, though, what then happens to these 72,000? Because when I look at what's coming out of East European capitals, they're saying they're not going to take any.
Yeah, Viktor Orban, the leader, if you like, for that Central Eastern European bloc, absolutely adamant that, he may even veto a deal here, possibly really angry about the prospect of Syrian refugees as part of this plan being sent from Turkey and then quoted out among other EU countries, not the UK, I should say. We are not part of any of these these EU-wide plans. But yes, there is real resistance there. But as you say, this is the second part of the deal. The first part is that from an unspecified date, perhaps as early as Sunday, anyone arriving illegally on Greece's shores will be turned around, maybe within hours, possibly at the maximum days, and sent straight back to Turkey. And then this one-for-one exchange of Syrians begins. But the practical sort of implementation of this plan has huge question marks around it, aside from the big, broad concerns about the legality of the plan in the first place. This is why several leaders going into these talks, President Hollande last night, for instance, we're not suggesting that a deal here is inevitable, even though, as I said, everybody knows that another migration crisis is weeks away as the weather starts to warm up, and they need something in place that they hope can stop people making that journey across the Aegean Sea to Greece.
Ben, just finally, when I used to cover these summits, we used to judge them by whether we needed 1, 2 or 3 shirts. How many shirts have you got with you for this one, Ben?
I have a few shirts. I have just heard somebody say that they may need some new pants. So I think there is an expectation here that this could go on a bit, but I'll keep you posted.
All right, Ben, thank you very much for that. Ben Wright in Brussels at the summit there, still going on. And BBC News, of course, throughout the day will keep you posted. We're joined now in the studio by the Labour MEP, Claude Moraes, and from Wrexham by the UKIP MEP, Stephen Wolfe. Claude Moraes, let me come to you first. Are you comfortable in doing a deal like this with Turkey?
No. And that it would work as well is going to be really moot point. I mean, this one for one, it's not really been tried around the world. Perhaps Australia, Trevor probably know, pushbacks, and then you take one. It's got overtones of this kind of thing. It's going to be extremely difficult. But if I tell you where it's coming from genuine crisis. I mean, are you going to leave this humanitarian situation like this? And secondly, I was speaking to the Greek immigration minister on Wednesday, and he said, you know, Turkey will be part of a solution of sorts. So you have to try something. And the final solution to this, if you like, is not going to...
Not the best phrase to use.
I just realised...
That's all right, I understand.
A compassionate and organised solution to this in the end...
A long-term solution.
A compassionate and organised solution to this in the end will involve Turkey in some way. And I think it is more realistic now, because you're dealing with... Turkey not getting much here. I mean, this visa liberalisation has got 72 conditions on it. Accession is as far away as it ever was.
You think it is? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Cyprus is saying no to the talks. France is going to block it. Every parliament has to say yes to it. I mean, accession is not even on the cards. So that kind of spectre is just, not there.
Let me go to Stephen Wolf. Even if the European Union didn't exist, Europe would be facing a migrant crisis, and in some collective way it would have to deal with that, and it would have to deal with Turkey, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely, Andrew, and I've always said on this show and in others that this crisis is a combination of many factors. It's not just the war that's happening in Syria, but it was the regime change that we had in Libya, it's the impacts in Afghanistan and Iraq, and of course the economic costs of having trade between the European Union and other countries in Africa, which puts tariffs on those countries very excessively. And so the only solution to this would be a global solution run by the United Nations and not placing the pressure solely on the EU. And that is the big thing that's been missing from the whole of this, from this crisis from the start. The UN, the international community, hasn't come together. They've all left it on the hands of the EU. And there are potential solutions to this. Take, for example, at the moment, Russia has managed to help cleanse ISIS from the northern part of Syria. There is a real opportunity now for the world to come together and have a safe zone in that area to allow Syrians to come back and create some sort of Marshall Plan for rebuilding that country and let those people have their lives back again.
Could I just suggest to you, though, that if it's been difficult enough to get a concerted and collective action among 28 European members, all in the same union and all in the same continent, that getting the kind of UN reaction that you're calling for on the scale that would be required would be, to put it politely, unprecedented and unlikely.
Well, I don't think it would be unprecedented and unlikely, not like this potential deal, which is really reckless, foolish and potentially dangerous for the long term for Europe as a continent. But if you look at the way that they dealt with the Kurdish area in northern Iraq, when we had to deal with Saddam Hussein, the world community came together and created a safe zone for the Kurdish people.
Well, that was basically the British and the Royal Marines that did that. That was John Major as Prime Minister. He did that with American air cover.
Well, absolutely, but why can't...
the UN.
No, but I'm suggesting here that on that occasion we came to a very positive, swift solution to enable the Kurds to live freely without the threatened pressure that came from Saddam Hussein. And here we have a great opportunity with ISIL being depleted.
Well, is it? Where's the evidence that ISIL's been depleted? But any evidence I've seen suggests that the Russians haven't been attacking Islamic State at all.
Well, I think there is other evidence to suggest that they actually have managed to cleanse ISIL from their area. They've given strength to Assad to be able to try and look after that area himself and create some security. But the key point here is that the Russians have backed down to the extent where they're saying there should be the talks in Geneva. And this is a great opportunity, Andrew. Isn't it a great opportunity for the world to come together and say, let's create this positive framework?
Let me put that to Claude Moraes, then I'm going to bring in our guests and again we'll have a discussion among the four of you. What's your reaction? The UN may be a better vehicle for doing this?
False dichotomy, and it's just pitching the EU against the UN. The UN are providing the tents that you see in Turkey, where there are almost 3 million refugees. Jordan and Lebanon burst to the seams with the UN operating there. The UN is there. America could take more, the Canadians could take more, and they are going to take more. The international community has to take more Syrians, no question of that. But when these countries, Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, became saturated, they were always going to come to Europe. Whether there was a European Union or not, that was going to happen. And this seems to be conveniently forgotten by those who want to just talk about the EU in this sense. So the question is now, what do you do about the refugee crisis? Turkey will be one part of the solution, but today at least there's some realism in taking it down a notch and realising that it won't just be about Turkey, which was what happened in the original discussion.
There may be, Rosa, some kind of deal spatchcocked together today. There always is at European summits. But then I would suggest there's a fair chance, I put it no higher than that it could start to unravel very quickly. And that could be the backdrop to our referendum campaign, and it could well be unhelpful to those who wish us to remain in the European Union.
Well, I think it goes both ways, doesn't it? Because the images that happen with each sort of refugee surge that we see coming again in the spring and the summer are sort of directly opposed to each other. On the one hand, you have this sort of streams of people coming in and the concerns that our friend we saw in Cardiff talked about what that means for national countries. But then you also seen these horrific sites of children dying. The little boy washed up on the beach last year, I think, changed the whole nature of the debate last summer.
But it also suggested, did it not, that the European Union had not stepped up to the crease to deal with this huge problem. And we're now many, many months after it, and it's still struggling to find a way forward.
Yeah, the EU is useless, but I think what we were talking about is the...
I should point out that other people think it's not useless.
but
member states are useless.
It's not having the EU worse. I think probably just about I would argue that it would be worse, because what this crisis shows is that you need to come together. And as you say, the deal that's being stitched together today isn't going to be a perfect deal. It's not even going to be a particularly good deal. But it means that finally politicians and countries are coming together to try and get a grip of this.
Trevor, are these ongoing developments, the backdrop, if I can put it that way, to the referendum campaign, is this helpful to the Leave side?
Yes, and I think that the campaign is going in the direction of the Leave side anyway. I agree with Rosa, as you might think I would, that the European Union is absolutely hopeless, and it has demonstrated this on almost every major issue that it's had to deal with, whether it's the single currency or the European Constitution or the rest of it. But on immigration and border control, it's known, as you say, that this was happening for at least 18 months, maybe longer, and it's done absolutely nothing concrete to deal with the problem at the beginning, and it's now completely out of control. I don't think there's anything that can be done that's going to work with Turkey. I think that will almost certainly unravel almost as fast as it's cobbled together. And I think that at the end it will be Turkey that will be the spectre at the referendum day vote, when I think people will say we've had enough of this.
Claude Morris, come to you, and then I'll go back to Mr. Wolfe. Is there not at least a possibility that any kind of agreement like this will be illegal under not just UN, under the Geneva Convention, but under European human rights laws? My understanding is that it is illegal to treat migrants as a group, that every migrant has to be treated, and particularly asylum seekers, as individuals on individual cases.
So in this new deal, Andrew, they have inserted, and you'll see it in the text, individual analysis of each case, which is an extraordinary thing. That means people will be processed in Greece. And there will
Which they're incapable of doing.
It's going to be extremely difficult, but there will be resources put into it. I mean, it's happened. It's happened with the former Yugoslavia in the 1990s. It has happened, and it can happen, and Europe can do it. And I disagree with Trevor, because I think on Turkey as a spectre for the Leave campaign, as people get the facts, and as Trevor knows, France across the political spectrum doesn't want Turkey in. Cyprus doesn't even want the talks to start. Visa liberalisation has been blocked by 72 chapters. Once people get the facts, they'll realise Turkey is not coming in.
But if they don't get visa liberalisation...
Maybe not the spectre that it once was.
If they don't get it, and I understand, I'm told they've met half the 72 conditions, but another half... If they don't get that, why would they agree?
Interesting point. I think what is happening is there are too many problems in Turkey, and they realise that they are only going to be one strand. I think Rosa was right, one strand of a bigger solution. And I think what is now happening is everyone's getting more realistic. Okay. Turkey's just not going to get that much anymore because it's got a lot of its own troubles, and the EU is being much more realistic in this deal than it was in the original one.
Stephen Wolfe in Wales and Claude Moraes with us in London. Thank you both for joining us.
I've been getting